Welcome to the Man of Recaps. This is Better Call Saul Season 4. Once again, we start in a Cinnabon, where future Saul Goodman is hiding out after the events of Breaking Bad. At the end of the Season 3 intro, he passed out while he was working. He's fine though, it was a fake heart attack, just stress. And coming to the hospital is giving him even more stress because his identity is totally fake. Luckily it clears just fine, but he's getting increasingly paranoid. Everyone he sees he thinks might be out to kill him. Back in the past, at the end of Season 3, Jimmy's brother Chuck had finally had it with his craziness about electricity and decided to kick over the lantern, and he does indeed die. Jimmy's sad for an episode, but then he remembers he and his brother hated each other, so he moves on real quick. Jimmy's lawyer license is suspended for a year, so he's looking for new jobs. He's living with his girlfriend Kim now, who's also taking a break from lawyering to heal up from a car accident. Jimmy's first interview is for a job selling printers, and Jimmy could sell ice to a polar bear. He gives an epic presentation. He blows these guys away so much they want to hire him right on the spot, but he's kind of like, what kind of losers are you? You want to just hire me off the street? I'm out of here. In the office, though, he saw one of their grandma's old figurines, and from his time working with old people, he knows that that one is real valuable. So he calls up Mike Ehrmantraut. It's like, hey, let's steal that, replace it with the similar looking cheap one. Easy money. But Mike doesn't need the money these days. In fact, he just quit his job at the parking lot. He stole a buttload of money from Hector Salamanca last season, and Gus Fring hooked him up with Madrigal to help him launder it. So Mike's getting checks in the mail for doing nothing, but he's not happy about the paper trail. So one day he shows up at Madrigal and starts bossing people around, letting everyone know that Mike Ehrmantraut is the new security consultant. Anyway, Jimmy finds another burglar for the easy job. Unfortunately, the dude's sleeping in his office tonight because he's having a fight with his wife. The burglar finally gets to contact Jimmy like, hey, get me out of here. So Jimmy goes and causes a distraction so he can slip away. Jimmy did get a day job at a cell phone store. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of traffic here. He gets his cut from the burglar, and the guy mentions that he uses a new burner phone for every job just so no one can track it. This gives Jimmy a great idea. He takes a bunch of the cell phones from his store and goes out on the streets selling them to criminals. It's a huge success. Unfortunately, some local ruffians decide to mug him, take all his earnings. He goes back to him later, but this time with backup, brings them to a piñata store and puts the fear of God in them. After that, Jimmy's burner phone side business is thriving, and he's going by his go-to fake name, Saul Goodman. Now, at the end of last season, Hector Salamanca had a stroke because Nacho switched out his heart pills for fake ones. And long story short, Gus Fring figures it out. So he has his guys take out Nacho's partner, and it's like, hey, I know you killed Hector Salamanca, but I won't tell anyone because you're now gonna secretly work for me. So they stage it to look like a rival gang hijacked him. To make it real, Nacho's gotta take a bullet. They decide to make it look really real and shoot him in the stomach, but luckily they bring him to the veterinarian black market doctor to patch him up. The Salamancas send the murder twins in to take out that rival gang, and this is all part of Gus Fring's master plan to eventually cut ties with the cartel and have his own drug empire this side of the border. To that end, he meets with Gale, the wacky chemist from Breaking Bad. It's like, hey man, eventually I'm gonna want you to cook meth for me, but not yet. First he flies in a German engineer to build the secret meth lab under his laundry. Gus brings Mike in to run the operation, and they build a secret bunker for the German workers to live, because to keep it totally secret, these guys can't go outside. They're doing nothing but working on the secret lab. Meanwhile, Nacho's life is pretty great these days. First he had Tuco to deal with, and then Hector. He's finally able to just run the business without a crazy Salamanca micromanaging him. Pretty soon though, a new crazy Salamanca shows up. This guy's Lalo. He's a real friendly, charismatic type, but also clearly a psychopath. He goes to see his uncle Hector, and in fact brings him the bell that he famously rings in Breaking Bad. Hector Salamanca has reached his final form. His diagnosis was really bad. They thought he'd be out of it for life, but Gus Fring had a specialist brought in to work with him every day and get him functioning. But not because he likes him, because he hates him, and he wants to make sure Hector's aware when he finally gets his revenge. Back to Jimmy, one day a cop comes and tries to shut him down, but Jimmy made sure he's not technically breaking any laws. He's hired Huel, his future Breaking Bad bodyguard. Huel sees him in trouble, doesn't realize this guy's a cop, so boom, hits him with the sandwich. That counts as assaulting a police officer, so Huel needs some legal assistance. Kim is finally back to work. Her one and only client is Mesa Verde Bank, which needs full-time legal assistance opening branches in other states. But Kim's feeling unsatisfied with this banking gig, so she starts taking up public defender work on the side. Mesa Verde's not okay with this. It's like, we need your full attention here. So Kim goes to the big fancy law firm that wanted to hire her last season, and she's like, hey, I've reconsidered. I can't do this on my own. I'm in. Jimmy's kind of unhappy about this. His big dream for when he gets his license back was for he and Kim to open their own practice together. He goes to Kim now, though, for help with Huel, and she's like, wait a minute, you've been selling burner phones out the back of a van? She's a little disappointed in him, but does agree to help Huel. But the DA's being a real stickler. She's like, Jimmy, I have an idea, but it's not exactly legal. So Jimmy takes a long bus ride and writes hundreds of letters, mails them from a small town in Louisiana. They flood the DA's office with letters begging for Huel's release, claiming he's some sort of hometown hero. When they call to check in on this, Jimmy's got all the phones ready, along with a bunch of accents and stories of how Huel saved the congregation from the fire. And they don't want to start a media circus, so they drop the case. Jimmy's afraid that Kim's real mad at him now, but on the contrary, she's kind of turned on. Later, when Mesa Verde wants to change one of their new branch's floor plans that have already been approved, there's just no way to do it. Unless she pulls another con. She goes in there on crutches with a sob story about being a single mother. She claims she just wants to check the floor plans, make sure they match, and they do. But then Jimmy comes in as her good-for-nothing brother who left the baby in the car. They run out and boom, breast milk ruins the blueprints. Kim freaks out, I'm gonna lose my job, but the lady's like, hey, we just checked that these are the same, we'll just approve those you brought. But of course, Kim swapped them out for the changed ones, so with Jimmy's style, she pulled off the impossible. Now, almost a year's gone by, and the Germans are getting pretty depressed. Guy's like, hey Mike, I miss my wife, can I get a small vacation? But Mike's like, sorry man, can't do it. But the guy can't take it anymore, he runs off, and it's all hands on deck to get him back. Lalo Salamanca's been spying on Gus's operation and sees something going down, so he tails Mike. But you can't tail Mike Ehrmantraut. Master of the parking lot, he lures him in, then on the way out, clogs up the machine with chewing gum, so he gets away, leaving Lalo trapped. This forces him to take a more aggressive approach to see what Mike's up to. Turns out the German guy's at a nearby resort just to get some much needed sun. He calls him up, pretending that he works for Gus, and the guy almost spills all the beans, but Mike's there to stop him just in time. It's like, hey Mike, sorry I ran off, I just needed a break. And it's like, dude, I don't think you understand how much trouble you're in. Mike's like, hey, he's sorry it won't happen again, but Gus is not given second chances. The order comes to kill him. It's tough because Mike kind of befriended this guy, but he's a professional. He takes him out. Meanwhile, Jimmy's lawyer suspension is finally over. It's just a formality to get the bar to reinstate him. But they deny him. They still think he's kind of a sleazeball. One of the reasons is because Jimmy didn't even mention his brother Chuck, who just died and was the inspiration for him to become a lawyer in the first place. In his will, Chuck actually left Jimmy a letter that, despite their animosity, was actually really nice. So at his appeal, Jimmy's gonna read the letter to show how much he and his brother loved each other. But Jimmy breaks down and really speaks from the heart about how he and his brother didn't always see eye to eye, but he loved and respected him. It's really quite touching, and they agree to reinstate him. But turns out Jimmy was totally acting. He's like, I can't believe those suckers bought it. He's got a plan for his new law practice. Turns out all the criminals he's been selling burner phones to make great future clients. Only problem is, they don't know him as Jimmy McGill, they know him as Saul Goodman. So he applies for a doing business as, and next season, Saul Goodman's officially in business. And that's how season 4 comes to an end. If you like this recap, hit that subscribe button. I'm bringing you the best recaps of TV and movies, so don't miss out.